Darlene here at Petal Academy. Good evening. It is our Wednesday Fearless with Flowers class. We call this home style. Every Wednesday we are doing a little how-to tutorial. And tonight we're going to be working with hyacinths. So I'm going to dive right in, but just so everybody knows, Rob's behind the camera. So if you're joining in live, you can ask any questions that you want. We want you guys to get the most out of getting inspired with floral design. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask, because that's what I'm here. I'm here to help. My tagline with Petal Academy is be fearless with flowers. And that's what we really want to help you do. So I feel like flowers bring you a lot of joy, and the easier you find working with them, the better off you will be. And it's great for your well-being too. So ask away any questions that you like. And we always do a little mocktail Wednesday. So Rob made me this grapefruit and basil with a little splash of grenadine and some soda water. So it's quite delicious. So thank you for that, honey.
You're welcome.
So that's our cocktail tonight. So all I've got with me tonight is I'm working with this grapevine wreath. So this is a little root wreath. So it's a little bit of a finer grapevine, and it's probably about a 6-inch wreath, and I've just unwrapped it. So oftentimes when you buy a grapevine wreath, it'll come coiled with either grapevine or a wire. So I've just undone that wire and sort of pulled it apart a little bit. So it's a little bit more loose. And the reason being is I'm going to use it as a collar. And I just have this really simple bowl that I'm using tonight. So this is probably, what would you say? That's like a 7-inch bowl?
Yeah, about
Probably,
that.
but 7 inches in diameter. But you could use any bowl. Literally, you could use a cereal bowl for this same thing. Or if you have something nice that's in a cut glass or anything like that, that could be used. And I'm also going to use tonight a pin frog. So a Kenzan or a flower frog is what they're known as. And this is really heavy. It's about a 4-inch one that I'm using. And the reason being is I'm going to be using hyacinths. So hyacinths have these really thick stems. They're quite soft though. So we're going to be using the Kenzan just to kind of make this a little more compact. Overall, my idea with this is I want it to look like a nest. So it kind of brings like this nice little bunch of hyacinths that are sort of popping out of this nest. So I think overall this would be a great design for Easter. So before I get really going here, I'm going to take a little bit of clear tape. You could do this without the tape, but I'm just going to put a little bit of tape across just to hold my wreath in place. So I've just got a little bit of clear tape. And again, I think I've mentioned this in a couple of other videos we've done, but if you had, we use a 1/4-inch tape as florists. Generally, we're lucky that way. We have this like custom tape, but you could just use Scotch tape. You could just use Scotch tape. And I always remind everyone when I teach, it's great not to touch the end of the tape with your fingers, because sometimes the oils in your fingers will make so I always leave a little bit when I'm doing this. And I've just taped a little bit of I'm going to tape maybe one more and make like a little bit of a grid. I just want to get this wreath on here, and maybe later you could take this off if it was like annoying, but it will just help guide your placements a little bit. So if you're super green in the design area, I would recommend this. It'll just give you a little bit of support, extra support, but like I said, you can remove those afterwards. And I'm just going right down the side of the bowl. I'm actually doing this to hold that wreath on as well, so that'll help. And always when I put my tape back, I always leave it off to the side just a little bit, because it's really annoying when you pick these up and you can't find the end. I swear, a lot of designers waste many, many minutes doing that. So right inside, you can see with the grid there, I've just got the little frog inside ready to go. A lot of designers will sometimes use a bit of a sticky, we call it stickum, or florist adhesive. So it's just basically like a gum, and it goes underneath the frog to hold it steady. So if you were using a smaller frog, I would recommend some gum underneath it, because you don't want it sliding around on the bottom of the bowl. That's always a bit of a pain. So, but mine's so large, I'm not going to bother with that tonight. So it's all good. I have a little jug of water here. This is my grandma's. I just found it in storage. Like, I'm so excited. So I'm just adding some water into my bowl. Probably about, a good halfway or so is great. And then we're working with hyacinths, like I said. So hyacinths are fantastic. They're very fragrant. Oh my gosh, they're one of my favorites. Some of the scents can be a little overwhelming. Like I find stargazer lilies are very pungent. Some people like them, some people don't. I personally love them. So I also love hyacinths because they're pungent as well. So I hate the word pungent. It sounds like it's really bad, but I guess it means just strong smelling. Highly fragrant. Highly fragrant is another way to sort of say it. So I'm using about three different colors of hyacinths tonight. We've got white, we've got the blue, and we've got this beautiful mauve color, which is kind of nice. We don't often see that one in cuts, which is great. The other thing I want to mention about hyacinths can be, they're like daffodils. So they perform well when they're all alone in a vase. That's kind of your best bet with them. Otherwise, what we do recommend is that you trim them and let them leach off in clean water before you use them with other flowers, because sometimes that sap that you're going to get from the inside can sort of be a little bit toxic to other stems when they're all getting cut at the same time. So daffodils and hyacinths are one of the things that sort of leach out that toxic sap a little bit. I have also had students that are a little bit sensitive to hyacinths because it is a little bit pungent, so that sap is a little bit toxic, so you can have reactions to it. So if you're nervous about that, if you have really sensitive skin, wear a pair of gloves just in case, you never know. So those are just a couple things before we kind of dive in that I want to mention. The other thing with hyacinths is that the stems are hollow. So I'm going to make this pretty low because I want this to sort of just look like a nice little group of hyacinths all kind of like just coming right out of this vase. So I'm going to cut these fairly short. So the overall length is probably only about 5 or 6 inches. And then they're kind of going down into this little hole. And I'm pushing them right into that flower frog, like right down inside. Can you see that okay, Rob?
Yes, I can.
Yeah? Okay, perfect. So they're just going right into the frog. So there's no magic, way that you have to approach this. What I would probably suggest is try to get your scale established right away. Look at this cute little baby. Look at that little guy. He's so sweet. Nice. Maybe we can use that. But you want to get your scale established when you do this. Another thing you may notice as you're working with the hyacinths, the leaves are going to be very fragile. So they'll want to fall off. If you cut them a little shorter, those hyacinth leaves are going to be a little bit floppy. So if you want to get I want a little bit of foliage around this just to make it look, nice and kind of very green and lush. So I'm being kind of mindful when I trim these. The other thing, hyacinths, and this is a great little suggestion, is sometimes you'll buy a potted plant, so a potted hyacinth, and it'll start to sort of, grow. They will continue to grow for you from that little bulb height that they do. And when they get to a certain height, they could be a little bit, long and sort of, they're starting to get gangly, for lack of a better description. So what you could do, if they're still looking good, if the blooms are still looking good, you could actually cut them off the plant and you can use them in a design like this. So once you've got a plant that's sort of done its thing and they're starting to get a little long, sometimes they'll get tall and they'll start to fall over, trim them and you could put them in a compact little bowl like this. And it's a great way to stretch out the life of them and enjoy them a little bit more. I'm grouping these just a little bit as I'm doing this so that we get a little bit of concentrated color around this arrangement, just a little bit. Because I want your eye to travel a little bit through this, but I want your eye to also pick up on those little pops of color that we have going on in here. And so far, hyacinths usually come in bunches of 5. So I've got about 15 stems, and I've got a little bit of backup over there, so I may dive into those if I need them, but hopefully I won't. So I would approach this, and another way you probably want to do this is have some lower ones, like you can see here. I just sort of tucked one a little lower because you want it to sort of look like it's sort of growing a little bit, right? So there's a little bit of differentiation in height would be nice to try to achieve in here, I think, overall. The other thing, so when I was talking about the plants, the other thing that you can think of sometimes, if the hyacinths are too floppy, so sometimes they'll get really floppy. I wonder if I've got one here. Yeah, here we go. This guy here is probably a good one to show you with. Let's pull this whole bunch out. So if they're really floppy and they're starting to kind of misbehave on you a little bit when you're doing this, good. A lot of these have these little babies. Yeah. Isn't that awesome? These are from my friend Tony at the food terminal, because he's just amazing. He's got these lovely little hyacinths. I'm not sure which farm they come from, but when you cut them, you can see they're sort of white here at the bottom a little bit, but it's getting kind of, when I'm holding it straight, it's like, it's doing this thing. So what you can do, if you were doing this for like a competition or a design or something, and you need these to stand up really straight, they actually have pretty great hollow stems. So you can take a shish kebab stem or a wire, a large scale, and just push it up the stem. And just be really careful. I kind of rotating it a little bit when I'm doing that. Just, you don't want it to poke through the stem. So you got to be a little bit patient with this, but sort of work it up the stem. And that will hold it straight. So it's perfect, because then you know it's not going, so if you had these a little bit higher up in an arrangement, if you put that bamboo support in there, you know that it's going to behave a little bit better for you in this arrangement. So that's kind of cool. I'm going to use this little baby in here. How cute is that?
Yeah, your pink one right there in front has a little baby.
There's a little baby too, yeah.
You can see it poking
so
under the
cute.
leaf.
Yeah, so cute. So now I'm at 16 stems of hyacinths because I just put that other one in there. I'm going to switch over to the white, get a bit of white in here. Just adding these. I think this is really pretty. This could be really cute arrangement too in like the blue and white pottery, like the Delft kind of pottery. I think that would be really sweet. I have a really nice vase, but I didn't have a nice low bowl that I wanted to use with that.
Have quite the aroma coming off of them.
I know, isn't it nice? It's so nice. I just love hyacinths for that scent, but it can be overwhelming. I know some people have a little bit of a issue with it. I know sometimes if you're really sensitive to allergies, it's probably a little bit too much for some people, but me personally, I love it. So I got a little bit of white in there. I'm going to give this a little rotation again. I want this to be nice and full. Again, I'm adding little groups of color because I want to really get that accent and that pop of color throughout as much as possible. And again, a little bit lower on the outsides of our arrangement, just to add that. So it's got a little bit of nice fullness in there. I think I got them all, eh? Out of that pile. So maybe we'll just use these up too. Why not? Let's keep going. We have them, so we might as well use them. So I'm probably at about 20 stems now. But 20 stems of hyacinths, it's not, sometimes, especially if you looked at, the average plant is going to have, usually they have between 3 and 5 bulbs. So if you bought yourself some plants, which I love this idea because this is just really a way to be sustainable with your designing. When you buy plants and they start to grow and you can use those as cut flowers, you know, if you bought the pots that contain 5 bulbs, so you'd need 4 pots. After they do that, keep the bulbs. So you're cutting off that cut flower. Try to save some of the greens when you do that, because the greens will get sucked down, those nutrients will get sucked back down into the bulbs of your pot, and you can save the bulbs and put them in the garden. And that way they'll come up for you next year, which is awesome. So it's kind of like the gift that keeps on giving when you do that. So always think about that. I always think too, like in the spring, it's great to be able to use a bit of potted material because you can do exactly that. You can add them into your garden. So if you've got the space and you want to start to sort of, you know, add in a few interesting plants that you love, think about that a little bit. So there we go. That's 20 stems of hyacinths just in our beautiful bowl here. So you could leave it like that if you want and just leave it quite plain. You could also take a little bit of simple bear grass and just wrap that around. And I've got a little bit of bear grass, so hey, let's give it a try. So again, this would be great. It doesn't really need water, bear grass. You can get away with not putting this in water. So I've just tucked it into the side of the bowl there, but you wouldn't have to do that necessarily. It'll dry fairly well. So I'm just going to take the end, give it a little bend, and I'm just going to tuck it into my wreath just a little bit here. You want it to sit fairly low so it goes into that grapevine really nicely. Just kind of weaving them into the grapevine, just pulling it through just a little bit here on the side. I'm just like, now I'm just going to trim these ends just a little bit, just like so. Just that little accent could be really fun. And then let's do some the other way, just to accent this a little bit further. Anybody have any questions?
No.
No, all good?
Questions right now.
It's all good. So I think this is like a perfect little, I like to call these styles of arrangements like a nest, the nest. And just because it is utilizing a grapevine wreath, and a lot of these components can be reused. You've got your flower frog, you can reuse that for other projects. You've got this little wreath, you can use that for other projects. And then of course your bowl. And like I said, you could use a cereal bowl and it would be great. So maintenance wise, when you're caring for your hyacinths, so these are just starting to get to that stage where they're like really, the fragrance is coming out, the flowers are starting to sort of burst. So good. So I would say this is probably going to last you probably between 3 and 7 days inside. Depends on how warm you keep your home. The warmer you have your home, the faster these are going to kind of explode and do their thing. So if you wanted to keep this a little bit longer, or prepare it before, you know, a dinner party or something like that. Oop, my grasses are escaping. I tuck those back in. Sometimes that happens. I got to wrap them around the grapevine base a little bit more. But if you wanted to keep this a little bit longer, what I would suggest is keep it somewhere cool. So some of you may have a wine cellar or maybe a garage. As long as it doesn't go below 0, you can keep these cool and it will actually stay a little bit better for you. So it'll kind of make everything go dormant. And then you can just sort of pull it out whenever you're hosting or whenever you've got folks coming over, anything like that. Just pop it into, even an extra refrigerator is a great place to put this. Like think of a flower fridge with a florist, right? So keeping this cool will help those blooms stay a little bit longer, but probably maximum, even if you keep it cool and things like that, you're probably going to get probably around 10 to 14 days out of these max. But if you keep it cool in between, who knows, right? You might get a little bit longer. And then, yep, you can reuse all those components. So that is it for our Wednesday Be Fearless with Flowers. Hope you guys enjoyed watching, and we'll see you next time. Live life in full bloom, everybody. Take care.